I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, in a tan two-story house on Maple Court with white shutters and a small front porch Mom liked to decorate every season. We weren't poor, but we weren't rich either, or at least that's what my parents, Linda and Robert Blake, always said. We live a simple, honest life. Dad would remind us whenever we asked for something new. My sister, Hannah, was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I was the helper, the quiet one expected to clean up, keep the peace, and smile through everything. That balance cracked the night of Hannah's engagement party. It was a warm Saturday evening in June. Our living room was glowing with fairy lights and filled with guests dressed like they'd stepped out of a magazine. A jazz band played softly by the window. The florist had draped white roses across the mantel, and a golden banner that read "Welcome Home" hung above the fireplace. Everyone was there to celebrate Hannah's engagement to Andrew, a real estate developer who drove a black Mercedes and smiled like someone who already owned the world. Dad raised his glass, calling for silence. "Everyone, we have a surprise for our lovely Hannah and her future husband." A woman in a navy suit stepped forward, holding a shiny folder embossed with the logo of a luxury property firm. "Congratulations, Hannah," she said. "Your parents have officially closed on your new home in Upper Arlington, a 4-bedroom colonial with a cedar porch, private driveway, and garden view. Appraised at $800,000. Applause thundered through the room. Champagne corks popped. Hannah squealed, her hands trembling as she hugged our parents. I stood near the dessert table, clapping politely, pretending not to notice how no one was looking at me. Then Mom turned, smiling as if she'd just remembered I existed. She handed me a small box wrapped in cheap silver paper. "And this is for you, dear." I peeled the paper away, revealing a pair of plain white shoes. "They were on sale," she added cheerfully. $50. Try them on later." Then her smile hardened. "Now go and serve the guests like a good girl. Bring out the drinks from the kitchen." I froze. The words hit harder than I expected. Something inside me snapped after years of quiet obedience. I set the box down on the piano. "No, Mom. I'm not serving tonight." The room went silent. Even the saxophonist stopped mid-note. Dad's face darkened. "You shameless girl," he hissed. "If you don't obey, you'll be punished. Don't embarrass us in front of everyone." People shifted uncomfortably. Hannah whispered something to Andrew and laughed under her breath. I felt my face burn, but I stood my ground. "I'm not your servant," I said softly, my voice shaking but steady enough to carry. And that's when everything changed. From the corner near the stage, a tall man I'd never seen before stood up and walked toward the microphone. He wore a dark navy suit, no tie, and had silver hair swept neatly back. His posture was calm, his voice deep and commanding. "If she won't serve," he said, "then I'll give her my $10 billion. The band stopped playing. A glass shattered. Every single person turned toward him. At first, people laughed, thinking it was some strange joke. But the man didn't smile. He kept walking toward me, eyes fixed on mine. There was something familiar in the way he looked at me, something I couldn't name. He stopped just a few feet away. "Emily," he said quietly, and the way he said my name made my heart stutter. "My name is William Harrington. I'm your father." A cold hush swept over the room. I blinked. "What?" He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a leather folder. "You were born at St. Gabriel's Hospital in Boston. The night after your birth, you were stolen from the nursery. My wife and I searched for years. The police gave up, but I didn't. A private investigator found you 3 weeks ago." He placed the folder on the piano beside the white shoes. "These people," he nodded at Linda and Robert, "are not your biological parents. They took you and told you lies." The room erupted. Guests whispered, gasped, and stared. Hannah clutched her property folder to her chest like it might save her. Dad tried to speak. "That's ridiculous. She's our daughter." William opened the folder. Inside were old photos, hospital documents, and a DNA report stamped in red, 99.9% match. I couldn't move. My body felt weightless, my mind struggling to keep up with the impossible truth unfolding before me. Mom's voice cracked. We raised her. We loved her. You can't just walk in here. William's calm didn't waver. You raised her on lies and control. You took her childhood from us. His eyes softened as he looked back at me. But I am here now. I came to take you home, Emily. You were never meant to live this way. He opened his arms, and for a moment, I saw the grief in his face, the kind that only a parent who has lost a child could carry. Everyone was frozen. The only sound was the quiet hum of the chandelier and the faint rustle of rose petals falling from the mantel. I looked at Linda and Robert, my parents, or rather, the people who had pretended to be. They stared at the floor, pale and trembling. Then, like the world was collapsing, Mom whispered, "We're sorry." It was the first apology I had ever heard from her. I didn't know what to say. My heart raced. My life, every memory, every belief, was unraveling before my eyes. William stepped closer. "You have a choice, Emily," he said softly. "Come with me, and I'll show you the truth of who you are." For a long time, I couldn't answer. I just stared at the white shoes on the piano, at the box that once felt like the measure of my worth, and then at the man who had called me his daughter. And right there, under the dim glow of a chandelier and the stunned silence of strangers, I realized my life had changed forever. That night, I didn't just lose a family, I found the truth I'd been denied since the day I was born. We left the party in silence. The rain had started to fall as the black town car pulled away from Maple Court, and I watched the lights of my old neighborhood blur through the glass. William, my real father, sat beside me, his hands clasped so tightly that his knuckles were white. Across from us sat Ava Carpenter, his lawyer, poised and calm even as the world I'd known was falling apart behind us. Ava's voice broke the quiet first. "Emily, I want you to know we will not make any legal moves without your permission."
Tonight wasn't meant to happen like that.
We didn't expect such a public confrontation. William's voice was rough. I couldn't hold it in any longer. When I saw her standing there, being humiliated like that, his voice cracked, and he stopped mid-sentence, pressing his palms against his knees. He reached into his coat and handed me a thin folder. "These are copies. The originals are in my safe in New York." His hand trembled slightly. "Inside you'll find your hospital records from St. Gabriel's in Boston, police reports, and photos of you at 2 days old." The nurse on duty that night vanished soon after, later linked to a trafficking ring. The trail went cold until a private investigator reopened the case last year. I flipped through the documents, my breath catching as I saw the name Emily Harrington typed neatly on the birth record. Then the photo, a small newborn wrapped in a white blanket with a pink ribbon, marked with the same date as mine. A DNA report sat on top, bold letters reading match, 99.9%. Ava gestured gently. "We confirmed your identity using a sample from your hairbrush." William's test was done independently. The results are absolute. By the time the car stopped outside the Westin Hotel in downtown Columbus, I was shaking. Everything that had made sense about my life, my name, my parents, even my childhood, was now an illusion. William checked us into a suite on the 22nd floor. He brewed a cup of coffee he didn't drink and stood by the window, looking out over the city lights. "Your mother's name was Margaret," he said quietly. "She passed away 10 years ago. Cancer." He took a deep breath. "But she never stopped waiting for you. Every year, she bought a birthday card and placed it in your nursery. She refused to let me take down the crib." His voice trembled, softer now. "She believed, with all her heart, that we'd find you." I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. "And you did," I whispered, "but too late for her." He turned toward me, his eyes full of tears.
"No, Emily.
Not too late for us." That night, I didn't sleep. Every memory replayed in flashes. The years of small insults disguised as discipline. The way I was always the one cleaning up while Hannah got the spotlight. The guilt I carried whenever I dared to say no. It struck me then how control can feel like love when it's all you've ever known. The next morning, Ava arranged a meeting with Linda and Robert at a quiet law office near the river. The conference room smelled faintly of old paper and disinfectant. They arrived together, looking smaller than I'd ever seen them. Linda's eyes were red, her hands twisting a tissue to shreds. She spoke first. "We couldn't have children," she said. "We met a woman who promised a private adoption. She said the baby's mother had died in childbirth and wanted her child to go to a good family. We paid $15,000 in cash in a parking lot in Cambridge. We thought it was legal." Ava didn't blink. "You never filed paperwork," she said flatly. "You never went through a court process or an agency. You moved across state lines with a stolen child." Robert's voice wavered. "We loved her," he said. "We gave her a home." I stared at them. My heart split in two. "You gave me a home," I said slowly, "but you also gave me fear. You made me believe love had to be earned by obedience. That's not love. That's control." William folded his hands on the table. "I don't want to press criminal charges if Emily agrees. But the record must be corrected. The truth must stand." He pulled out another document, a trust fund established in my name at birth. 12 pages, embossed seal, notarized signatures. Inside were lists of properties and assets that didn't feel real. A brownstone in Boston valued at $8 million, a townhouse in London worth £5 million, and shares in Harrington Capital, the firm William founded. A foundation, seeded with $25 million, had been set up to support missing children cases, created the same year I was taken. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. All this was waiting for me? I asked, voice thin. William nodded. "None of it replaces the years you lost. But it's yours by right." Ava leaned forward. "We'll file the petition in Massachusetts to correct your birth certificate. From there, you decide how much contact you want with Linda and Robert. There's no rush. Healing takes time." On the way out, Linda reached for my sleeve. "Emmy," she whispered, "please don't hate us. We didn't know." I paused, my throat tightening. "You knew enough to lie," I said softly. "You could have told me the truth when I was old enough to understand. You chose not to." Tears rolled down her cheeks, and for a moment, I wanted to comfort her. But I didn't. I couldn't. That night, back at the hotel, I sat by the window watching the lights flicker across the river. My name, Emily Blake, no longer belonged to me. My childhood was a borrowed story. Everything I had once believed about family had been rewritten in a single night. William knocked softly on my door before midnight. "Can I come in?" I nodded. He sat across from me, the folder resting in his lap. "You don't have to come with me right away," he said. "You can take your time. I just want you to know you have a home waiting for you. Your mother's home." I met his eyes and saw something steady, something true. "I'll come," I said quietly. "But not to escape them. To find myself." He smiled for the first time that night. "That's all I ever wanted for you." When he left, I opened the window and let the night air in. The wind smelled like rain and change. My old life had ended, but the new one hadn't yet begun. I didn't know who I was going to be tomorrow, but for the first time, I had the chance to decide. July came with humid air and a restless kind of hope. When I landed in Boston, the sun had just broken through the clouds, painting the harbor gold. William met me at Logan Airport with a driver and a bouquet of pink peonies, Margaret's favorite, he told me. I sat beside him as we drove through the city he said had once been my first home. Every turn felt like a map unfolding, leading me somewhere I had always been meant to return. When the car stopped at 48 Acorn Street, I felt my breath catch. The brownstone stood tall and timeless with its black door, glossy brass knocker shaped like a lion, and climbing ivy curling up the brick. William turned the key slowly, almost ceremonially. "Welcome home," he said. Inside, everything smelled faintly of lemon oil and old books. The walls were lined with family photos, most unfamiliar to me. Faces of cousins, grandparents, Margaret smiling with eyes that looked so much like mine. Then William led me upstairs to a pale yellow room. "We kept this for you," he said quietly. A nursery. A mobile of tiny sailboats hung above a crib that had been polished, though never used again. On a shelf, a hand-painted name stretched across the wood in fading blue letters. Emily. I ran my fingers over the paint and felt a grief too deep for words. The probate court hearing was brief, but life-altering. The judge reviewed the DNA results, the hospital affidavits, and the investigator's report, and then signed the order to correct my birth certificate. "You are hereby recognized as Emily Margaret Harrington," she said, her gavel falling like a heartbeat. I walked out holding the certified copy in my hand, the paper light but heavy with truth. Ava had already arranged a clean plan for my life in Ohio. She believed in structure, in ending confusion before it grew roots. "You'll separate everything clearly," she said. "No joint accounts, no emotional debts disguised as duties. Boundaries are not punishments, they're maps to peace." So we flew back to Columbus to meet Linda, Robert, and Hannah one final time. The meeting was held in a quiet office downtown, far from the gossip that had spread since that unforgettable night. They arrived looking smaller, more human, and maybe more afraid. Ava placed a single document on the table, a settlement agreement. It was simple. They would sign a declaration admitting they had never legally adopted me and had knowingly concealed my origin. In return, William and I would not press criminal charges. They could keep their home and receive a one-time payment of $200,000 to pay off their debts and start over. But there were conditions: no public claims, no media stories, and no further contact unless I initiated it. Linda's hands trembled as she read. "You're paying us to disappear?" "No," I said. "I'm giving you a way to stop lying, to yourselves and to everyone else." Robert didn't look up.
His voice was low.
"We did love you, Emily. I believe you did," I said. "But love built on lies doesn't last. I'm not your daughter, and I'm done being your servant." The door opened halfway through the meeting, and Hannah walked in late, dressed in designer heels and irritation. She dropped her coffee on the table so hard that it splashed. "Enjoy your billions," she said, glaring at me. "Must be nice to be the lost princess." "It's not about money," I said. "It's about freedom." She laughed, but it wasn't real. "You always thought you were better than us." "No," I answered quietly. "I just thought I had to earn your love. Now I know better." The air in that room thickened until Ava spoke. "Please sign." They did, one by one, hands shaking as ink met paper. When it was over, the silence felt final. In August, I returned to Boston for good. The brownstone felt both familiar and foreign, like living inside a story that had waited too long to be told. I spent the first week unpacking the few things I owned: books, clothes, and an old photo album from Ohio that I couldn't bring myself to throw away. William had already moved back into the master suite downstairs, while I took a room on the top floor that overlooked the narrow cobblestone street. Slowly, I built a new rhythm. I accepted a position at a creative agency in New York, 3 days in the office, 2 remote from Boston. I replaced my aging hatchback with a quiet hybrid and donated the rest of my car budget to a shelter that helped women escaping controlling homes. It felt symbolic, like rewriting the ending of a story that once trapped me. Then came the foundation. The Harrington Foundation for Missing and Stolen Children launched with a seed fund of $25 million. I added $5 million more for my own trust. The office occupied a modest brick building in Cambridge, filled with volunteers and researchers dedicated to reuniting families torn apart like mine. I hired Grace Miller, a woman whose own niece had vanished years ago, to serve as director. She was practical, fierce, and understood that money could never replace justice, but it could help chase it faster. Each night, I sat on the brownstone steps with William, sipping tea as the streetlights flickered on. We talked about the years we'd lost, how he had followed every lead, paid investigators across continents, and even chased rumors through hospitals that turned up nothing. He told me how Margaret spent every Christmas lighting a candle in the nursery window, whispering that it was for me. "She believed we'd find you," he said softly one night, even when I stopped believing in anything. Sometimes he'd bring out old photos, Margaret holding baby me in the hospital, the brownstone before the ivy grew, his first company's logo framed in faded gold. Other times, we didn't talk at all. We just sat there, 2 people mending a bridge that had been missing for 30 years. I was learning to breathe differently. For the first time, my life didn't revolve around earning permission to exist. I woke early, walked along the Charles River, bought fresh flowers, and came home to a place that truly belonged to me. There were moments of grief that caught me off guard, finding a toy box still full in the nursery, or reading a letter Margaret had written years ago and never sent. But with each small ache came healing. One evening, William said quietly, "You know, I never stopped thinking of you as my daughter, even when the world said you were gone." "And now?" I asked. He smiled. "Now I finally get to say it aloud." The city lights reflected off the brownstone windows like little stars. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like someone else's shadow. I was finally home. Not in a house built by obligation, but in one built by truth, paper, and love that survived 30 years of silence. December arrived with an icy wind and streets dressed in silver frost. Boston's air carried that sharp mix of pine and chimney smoke that always reminded me of both endings and beginnings. I had just finished finalizing a grant through the Harrington Foundation, a new case involving a missing teenager from Chicago, when an envelope slid under my brownstone door. The handwriting stopped me cold. It was Hannah's. The card inside was glittery red with embossed gold letters. "Family Christmas Party, Upper Arlington House, December 23rd, 7 p.m. At the bottom, in her sharp cursive, she'd added, "If you still consider us family." I stared at it for a long time. Every instinct told me not to go. The last time I'd been in that house, truth had shattered like glass, and nothing had felt safe since. But another part of me, a quieter, stronger part, knew that avoiding them meant letting the wound fester. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted closure. So, I called William. "I received an invitation," I said, "from them." He was silent for a moment. "Do you want to go?" "I think I need to," I said. "But only if you'll come with me." "Then I'll be there," he said simply. On the night of the party, snow fell thick and steady. When the driver turned onto Hannah Street, I saw the same cedar porch now wrapped in new garlands and bright white lights. Music spilled out through the frosted windows. I stood on the sidewalk, hands in my coat pockets, watching my breath cloud in the air. For a few seconds, I thought about turning back. But I didn't. I walked up the steps and rang the bell. Hannah opened the door. She looked the same, perfect hair, flawless makeup, but her eyes flickered with something uneasy. "You came," she said, sounding almost surprised. "Of course," I said. "You invited me." Inside, everything looked expensive and over-decorated. A tall Christmas tree towered near the fireplace, covered in gold ornaments. People were laughing, sipping champagne, pretending the house didn't still echo with the ghosts of last summer's scandal. Linda and Robert stood near the hearth, stiff and pale, like they'd aged years and months. Robert cleared his throat and tapped his glass. "Everyone, please." The chatter faded. "We'd like to say a few words." He held a small note card in his hand, reading carefully. "We misled our daughter about her origin for many years. We are deeply sorry. We have agreed to make peace and stop the harm caused by secrecy and pride. We wish her happiness." His voice wavered at the end. It wasn't elegant, but it was public. And, in its awkwardness, it was honest enough. I nodded. "Thank you." But Hannah rolled her eyes. "Touching," she said under her breath. Then louder. "So, are you going to buy me another house, William? Or is that only for her?" The crowd froze. William, calm as ever, set down his glass. "I didn't buy Emily a house," he said evenly. "Her mother and I bought one before she was born. We kept her room ready for 30 years. That wasn't a gift. That was hope." The words hung heavy in the air. Even Hannah's sharpness faltered. People shifted uncomfortably, pretending to check their phones or refill drinks. I could feel every eye flicker toward me, waiting to see how I'd respond. I took a slow breath and stepped forward. My voice felt different, steady, grounded, my own. "I want to say something too." The room quieted. For years, I lived believing my worth was something to be earned through service. I was the helper, the one who cleaned, smiled, and obeyed. That ends tonight. I reached into my bag and pulled out a white shoe box, the same one from that fateful party. I kept these, I said. Not because they were valuable, but because they reminded me of what I'd outgrown. I set the box under the Christmas tree. These don't fit me. They never did. Then I held up a different box, wrapped in plain brown paper. This is for you, Hannah. She frowned but took it. When she opened it, confusion crossed her face. Inside was a folder labeled First-Time Homeowner Budget and another marked Job Search Plan. It's not $800,000, I said quietly. It's a guide. A map. You're capable of building your own life, just like I had to. If you don't want it, that's your choice. But I'm done living anyone else's story. For a second, she just stared at me, something breaking behind her perfectly composed face. Then she set the folder on the table and walked out of the room without a word. I didn't follow. Outside, the snow had grown heavier. Through the window, I could see flakes swirling under the porch light like falling stars. William touched my shoulder gently. It's time, he said. We left together, walking back through the snow in silence. The cold air was sharp against my cheeks, but it felt cleansing. When we reached the car, William hesitated. There's one more thing, he said softly. Something I should have given you weeks ago. He handed me a small key tied with a red ribbon. Your mother planned something for you, if we ever found you. In the brownstone basement, there's a wooden box. She filled it with letters, one for each of your birthdays, from 1 to 20. My throat tightened. She really believed she'd find me. He smiled sadly. She never stopped. Later that night, back in Boston, we sat together at the kitchen table. The city outside was quiet, snow muffling every sound. The brownstone felt alive with warmth and memory. William set the wooden box in front of me. The lid creaked as I opened it, revealing neatly stacked envelopes, each labeled in Margaret's delicate handwriting. I pulled out the one marked for age 30. The paper smelled faintly of lavender. I read aloud, my voice trembling. If you are reading this, it means love did not give up. My brave girl, your worth is not a prize handed to you at a party. It is the house within your heart, built from every moment you chose truth over fear. Live freely, love deeply, and never let anyone make you small. Tears blurred the ink. I pressed the letter against my chest. William reached across the table and took my hand. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. The next morning, I called Grace at the foundation and approved a new grant, the largest yet, to expand our search network across the Midwest. Let's find them all, I told her. Every lost one. Then I bundled up, stepped outside, and walked to the park. The air was cold and clean. The city was hushed except for the crunch of my boots on the snow. I thought of the house that had once rejected me and the one that had waited patiently for my return. I thought of Margaret's letter, of boundaries rebuilt from truth instead of fear. There would still be hard days. Healing doesn't erase the past. But I had my name back, my purpose, and a key that finally fit the right door. As I stood under the falling snow, I felt it, the quiet, undeniable peace of coming home at last.